The dust cloud appeared on the horizon just as the sun began its descent toward the mountains, and Isaac Vance knew before the wagon even reached the edge of his property that whoever was driving it needed help badly. The contraption lurched and swayed like a drunkard stumbling home from the saloon, one wheel wobbling so violently it seemed ready to fly off at any moment. Isaac set down the fence post he had been securing and wiped the sweat from his brow with his sleeve, his dark eyes narrowing as he watched the wagon's agonizing progress across the Colorado plains. It was late September in 1878, and the air held that peculiar quality of autumn in the high country, crisp and clear, the kind of weather that made a man grateful to be alive even after a hard day's work. The wagon made it another 100 yards before the inevitable happened. The front left wheel gave way with a crack that echoed across the valley, and the entire contraption lurched sideways before settling at an awkward angle. Isaac was already walking toward it, his long legs eating up the distance with practiced efficiency. As he drew closer, he could make out the driver more clearly, a woman in a faded blue dress, her shoulders slumped forward in a posture of such complete defeat that it made something twist in his chest. She did not move as he approached, just sat there on the tilted bench with the reins loose in her hands, staring at nothing. The two horses hitched to the wagon looked as worn out as their driver, their heads hanging low, ribs visible beneath their dull coats. Everything about the scene spoke of desperation, of a journey that had pushed everyone and everything past their limits. "Madam," Isaac called out when he was close enough to be heard without shouting, "you all right there?" The woman's head turned slowly, as if the simple act of acknowledging another human being required more energy than she possessed. When her eyes met his, Isaac felt that twist in his chest again. She was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, with honey-colored hair that had escaped from its pins and hung in tangled strands around a face that might have been pretty if it was not so marked by exhaustion and something deeper, something that looked like grief. "The wheel broke," she said, and her voice held no inflection at all, just a flat statement of fact. "I can see that," Isaac replied gently. He moved closer, studying the damage. The wheel had not just come loose, the hub had cracked clean through, likely from hitting too many rocks on roads that were barely worthy of the name. "Where were you headed? Does it matter?" The question was not defiant, just tired. She looked down at her hands, still clutching the reins. "Everywhere I go, something breaks. The wagon, the axle back in Kansas, before that, the harness near the Missouri border. Everything just keeps breaking." Isaac heard what she was not saying in the spaces between her words. He had seen enough broken people in his 31 years to recognize one when he was standing right in front of her. "Well," he said, keeping his tone matter of fact, "this wagon is not going anywhere today, that much is certain. But I've got a barn about a quarter-mile back that way, and the tools to fix it. If you would like, I can unhitch your horses, get them some water and feed, and we can take a look at getting you sorted out." She finally looked at him properly then, really looked, and he saw suspicion war with desperation in those gray eyes. "Why would you help me?" "Because you need it," Isaac said simply, "and because it is the right thing to do. I am Isaac Vance. I own the ranch you are currently sitting on the edge of, and I promise you that my intentions are nothing but decent and helpful." For a long moment, she just stared at him, and Isaac wondered what she saw. He knew he was not much to look at, tall and lean from hard work, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that was more weathered than handsome. But he kept his gaze steady and open, letting her make whatever assessment she needed to make. "Willa Vaughn," she said finally, and her voice had softened just a fraction. And I would be grateful for the help, Mr. Vance, more grateful than I can properly express. Isaac is fine, he said, already moving to unhitch the horses. Let's get these animals taken care of first. They look like they have been working hard for a long while. As he worked, loosening buckles and freeing the horses from their burden, Willa climbed down from the wagon seat with movements that were stiff and careful. Up close, he could see more details: the dress that had been mended multiple times, the shoes that were worn nearly through at the soles, the wedding ring that caught the fading sunlight when she moved her left hand. "Is your husband traveling with you?" Isaac asked, keeping his voice casual as he led the first horse toward his barn. "Dead," Willa said, following with the second horse. "4 months ago, cholera took him and our daughter both within 2 days of each other." The simple, devastating statement hit Isaac like a physical blow. He stopped walking for just a moment, then continued, processing this information. "I am sorry for your loss. That is a terrible thing to bear." "Yes," Willa agreed, and that flat tone was back in her voice. "It is." They walked the rest of the way to the barn in silence. Isaac's ranch was modest but well-maintained, a testament to the 7 years of backbreaking work he had put into it since buying the land. The barn was sturdy, built with his own hands from good Colorado timber, and the horses inside were healthy and well cared for. He had built something here, something solid and lasting, and he took quiet pride in it even though there was no one to share it with. He showed Willa how to work the pump for fresh water while he got feed for her horses and started rubbing them down. She worked mechanically, filling the trough without comment, and he noticed how thin she was, the way her dress hung loose on what had probably once been a fuller figure. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Willa paused in her pumping, considering. "Yesterday morning, I think." "Maybe the morning before. I have been rationing what I had left." Isaac bit back the curse that wanted to escape. Instead, he finished with the first horse and straightened up, brushing hay from his shirt. "Right. Well, once we get these animals settled, you are coming inside for a proper meal." "No arguments, Mr. Vance. I cannot possibly impose any more than I already have." "Isaac," he corrected. "And yes, you can and you will. I have got beef stew that has been simmering since this morning and enough biscuits to feed a crew of ranch hands. You will sit at my table and eat until you have had your fill, and then we can talk about what comes next for you and that wagon." For the first time since he had seen her, something flickered in Willa's expression, something that might have been the beginning of gratitude or maybe just relief at having someone else make decisions for a while. "All right," she said quietly. "Thank you." The sun had nearly set by the time they had both horses properly tended and settled in stalls with fresh hay. Isaac led Willa to his house, a simple 2-room cabin he had built his 2nd year on the property, with plans to expand it someday when he had reason to. The interior was neat and spare, furnished with furniture he had made himself, everything functional and well-crafted if not fancy. Willa stood just inside the doorway as if uncertain whether she should really be there, so Isaac guided her to the table and pulled out a chair. "Sit," he said firmly. "I will get the food." He ladled out generous portions of stew into 2 bowls and set one in front of her along with several biscuits. Willa stared at the meal for a moment, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I cannot remember the last time someone just took care of something for me," she said, her voice breaking slightly on the words. Isaac settled into the chair across from her and picked up his spoon. "Well, get used to it for tonight at least. Now eat before it gets cold." She did, and Isaac tried not to watch too obviously as she devoured the stew with the kind of hunger that spoke of real deprivation. He refilled her bowl twice before she finally slowed down, and only then did he feel comfortable eating his own meal at a normal pace. "So," he said when she had finished and was sipping the coffee he had poured for her, "where were you heading before the wheel gave out?" Willa wrapped her hands around the warm mug, staring into the dark liquid. "West. Just west. I thought maybe California or Oregon. Somewhere that was not Kansas, where every corner did not remind me of them. That is a long journey to make alone. I did not have much choice. My husband's family blamed me for his death, said I should have taken better care of him and Emily. My own family is back in Ohio, and I have not spoken to them in 3 years, not since they told me marrying Thomas was a mistake." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Turns out they were right, just not for the reasons they thought." Isaac sipped his own coffee, thinking, "What made it a mistake?" "He was a dreamer," Willa said. "Always chasing the next opportunity, the next sure thing that would make us rich. We moved 5 times in 3 years of marriage. Kansas was supposed to be our fresh start, our chance to finally settle down and build something real. And then the cholera came through." She fell silent, and Isaac did not push. He understood loss, had his own share of it. His parents had died when he was 19, a wagon accident on their way to visit his sister in Denver. His sister had succumbed to pneumonia 2 winters later, leaving him alone in the world at 21. It was part of what had driven him to build this ranch, to create something permanent in a world where everything could be taken away in an instant. "The wheel can be fixed," he said after a while. "The hub will need to be replaced entirely, which means I will have to craft a new one. That is 2, maybe 3 days of work if I focus on it. The horses need more than that, though. They are half-starved and exhausted. They need at least a week of good feed and rest before they should pull anything heavier than an empty buckboard." "I do not have a week," Willa said, but there was no real protest in her voice, just resignation. "Why not? What is waiting for you in California that cannot wait a few more days?" "Nothing," she admitted. "Absolutely nothing is waiting for me anywhere. That is rather the point." Isaac set down his coffee cup and leaned back in his chair, studying her in the lamplight. She looked a little better now, with food in her belly and warmth from the stove starting to chase away the chill of exhaustion. "Then stay," he said. "Stay the week. Let your horses recover. Let me fix your wagon properly. There is a spare room here. Nothing fancy, but the bed is decent and the roof does not leak. You can rest, figure out your next move without having to do it from the seat of a broken wagon on the side of the road." Willa met his eyes, and he saw the war happening behind them. Pride versus practicality, suspicion versus desperate need for exactly what he was offering. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not know anything about me." "I know you have been through hell," Isaac said quietly. "I know you are trying to keep going even though everything in you probably wants to just give up. I know what it is like to lose everyone who matters and have to figure out how to keep living anyway. And I know that sometimes the thing that saves you is someone else offering a hand when you need it most, no strings attached." "No strings, no strings," he confirmed. "You can leave whenever you want. I am just offering a place to catch your breath." She was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Finally, she nodded. "A week then. Just until the wagon is fixed and the horses are fit to travel, and I will work for my keep. I can cook, clean, mend, whatever you need." "That is not necessary." "It is to me," Willa said firmly, and there was the first flash of real spirit he had seen from her. "I will not be a charity case." Isaac nodded, recognizing that she needed this, needed to feel like she was contributing rather than just taking. "All right, fair enough. I can always use help around the place." He showed her to the spare room, which was really just a small space with a bed, a chest, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. It had been his sister's room during the brief time she had lived with him before her death, and it still held some of her things: a quilt she had made, a hairbrush on the chest, small reminders of a life cut short. "I will leave you to get settled," Isaac said from the doorway. "There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up, and extra blankets in the chest if you get cold. Mornings start early around here, but sleep as long as you need tomorrow. You look like you could use it, Isaac." Willa turned to face him, and in the soft light from the lamp she carried, she looked very young and very vulnerable. "Thank you, truly." "You are welcome," he said simply, and then left her to her privacy. That night, lying in his own bed on the other side of the thin wall that separated the two rooms, Isaac listened to the sound of quiet crying and stared at the ceiling. He had meant what he said about no strings, about just offering help to someone who needed it. But there was something about Willa Vaughn that had gotten under his skin in the span of a few hours, something in her combination of fragility and stubborn strength that called to something deep in his chest. He was still awake when the crying finally stopped and her breathing evened out into sleep. Only then did he let himself drift off, already planning the work he would need to do on the wagon and thinking about how he could help this broken woman find her way to being whole again. Morning came cold and bright, frost sparkling on the grass outside when Isaac rose with the sun as he always did. He dressed quietly and headed out to tend the animals, giving Willa the chance to sleep. The ranch demanded constant attention, horses to feed, stalls to muck, fences to check. 100 small tasks that added up to a full day's work, even when he was not taking on the additional job of rebuilding a wagon wheel from scratch. He was in the barn, checking on Willa's horses, when he heard the cabin door open and close. Through the open barn door, he watched her emerge, wearing the same dress as yesterday but with her hair properly pinned up now. She stood on the small porch for a moment, looking out at the ranch and the mountains beyond with an expression he could not quite read. Then she spotted him watching and lifted a hand in greeting before heading toward the barn. Her movements were stiff, whether from sleeping in an unfamiliar bed or from the accumulated wear of hard travel, he could not say. "Morning," Isaac called out as she entered. "Did you sleep all right?" "Better than I have in weeks," Willa admitted, coming to stand beside him at the stall where her horses were contentedly munching hay. "They look better already. Good food and rest will do that. They are young enough that they should recover well, but they were running on empty when you got here." Willa reached out to stroke the nose of the nearest horse, a chestnut mare with a white blaze. "I know. I have been pushing them too hard, pushing everything too hard. I just wanted to get as far away as possible, as fast as possible. And now—" She was quiet for a moment, her hand still on the horse's velvety nose. "Now I am too tired to run any more, at least for a week." Isaac nodded, accepting that. "I've got morning chores to finish up here, then I was planning to ride out and check the fence line on the north pasture. Should be back by early afternoon, and then I will start work on your wagon. There is food in the cabin, help yourself to whatever you want." "I told you I would work for my keep," Willa reminded him. "What needs doing?" He considered her, taking in the dark circles still visible under her eyes despite a night's sleep. "Honestly, today you should just rest. Tomorrow you can help if you are still set on it. I am not an invalid, Isaac. I did not say you were. But you are exhausted and you have been through a terrible ordeal. There is no shame in taking a day to just be." She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in his expression must have convinced her he was not going to budge on this. "Fine. But tomorrow I start helping properly. Deal." He watched her walk back to the cabin, noting the way she paused to look around, really seeing the place in daylight for the first time. The ranch was not much by some standards, but Isaac had built it with his own hands and considerable sweat. The cabin, the barn, the corrals, the fences stretching out to enclose good grazing land with the mountains as a backdrop. It was his, every inch of it, and he had made it into something worth having. The day passed in the familiar rhythm of ranch work. Isaac checked the fences, made notes of repairs that would be needed before winter came in earnest, and spent time with his own horses, the sturdy cow ponies that were as essential to his operation as his own two hands. When he returned to the cabin in the early afternoon, he found it transformed. The floor had been swept clean. The dishes from breakfast and last night's dinner were washed and put away. The table had been scrubbed, and something was bubbling on the stove that smelled rich and savory. Willa stood at the counter, kneading dough with practiced efficiency, her sleeves rolled up and a streak of flour on one cheek. She looked up when he entered, and there was something almost defiant in her expression. "I know you said to rest, but I could not just sit idle all day." "I am not built that way." Isaac hung his hat on the peg by the door and tried not to smile. "I can see that. What are you making?" "Bread. And I found some dried apples in your stores, so I made a pie as well." "And that is venison stew on the stove, unless I am very wrong about what was in your cold box." "You are not wrong." He moved closer, looking at the pie cooling on the windowsill, the neat lattice work on top. "This all looks amazing. You did not have to go to so much trouble." "It is not trouble. It is what I know how to do." Willa returned her attention to the dough, punching it down with more force than strictly necessary. "My mother made sure I knew how to keep a proper house, even if she did not approve of the man I was keeping it for." Isaac heard the bitterness in that statement, but did not comment on it directly. Instead, he washed up at the basin and sat down at the table, content to watch her work. There was something soothing about it, the domestic scene, the good smells filling the cabin, the presence of another person making the space feel alive in a way it had not in years. "So tell me about this ranch," Willa said, shaping the dough into loaves. "How did you end up here?" Isaac leaned back in his chair, gathering his thoughts. "Came out here in 1871, not long after I lost my sister. I had some money saved, and I wanted to build something that would last, something that could not be taken away by sickness or accident. Found this land, bought it for a decent price, and started from nothing. First year I lived in a tent while I built the barn. Second year I built the cabin. Been adding to it bit by bit ever since. It must have been hard doing all that alone." "It was," he admitted. "Still is sometimes. But it is mine. Every board, every fence post, every acre. That means something to me." Willa slid the bread pans into the oven and turned to face him, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I have never had that, something that was really mine that I built with my own hands. Everything I had was always tied to someone else, my parents, then Thomas. Even our house in Kansas was rented. Is that what you are looking for in California, something of your own?" "I do not know what I am looking for," she said honestly. "I just know I could not stay where I was." They talked through the afternoon while the bread baked and the stew simmered. Willa asked questions about ranching, about Colorado, about the life Isaac had built. He found himself telling her things he had not spoken about in years, about his parents, his sister, the loneliness of building something beautiful with no one to share it with. And slowly, carefully, she began to open up too, telling him about her childhood in Ohio, about falling in love with Thomas's promises of adventure, about her daughter Emily, who had lived only 3 years but had filled those years with joy. She had Thomas's smile, Willa said softly, staring out the window at the mountains. And she loved to sing. She made up these nonsense songs about everything, about the chickens, about her doll, about the clouds in the sky. And then one day she was burning with fever, and 2 days later she was gone, and I never got to hear her sing again. Isaac felt the weight of that loss settle in the room like a physical presence. "There are no words that make that hurt less," he said quietly. "I wish there were." "No," Willa agreed. "There are not. But somehow it helps to say it out loud to remember her. Thomas's family, they did not want to talk about her after. They just wanted to move on, pretend it had not happened. It made the grief so much worse, having to carry it alone." "You are not alone now," Isaac said, and meant it in a way that went beyond just this moment, this afternoon. "Not for this week, anyway." She looked at him then, really looked, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of kindred spirits who had both been broken by loss and were trying to figure out how to be whole again. Dinner that night was the best meal Isaac had eaten in longer than he could remember. The bread was perfect, the stew rich and flavorful, the apple pie sweet and tart in just the right proportions. They ate together at the table as the sun set outside and talked about easier things, books they had read, places they had seen, small pleasures that had marked their lives before grief had taken up residence. The next morning, Willa was up before dawn, already dressed and pinning up her hair when Isaac emerged from his room. "I am helping today," she announced before he could say anything. "You can either tell me what needs doing or I will just start doing whatever looks necessary." Isaac bit back a smile at her determination. "All right then. We will start with feeding the animals and mucking the stalls. Then I will show you what I am doing with the wagon wheel so you can help if you want." They fell into an easy rhythm working together. Willa was no stranger to hard work, and she tackled each task with efficient competence. Isaac found himself enjoying her company, the way she asked questions about the horses and the ranch, the way she did not shy away from the dirty work of mucking stalls or hauling water. By mid-morning they had moved to the wagon, which Isaac had hauled into the barn using his own horses. The broken wheel lay on the workbench, the cracked hub clearly visible. Isaac explained what needed to be done, how he would have to craft a new hub from seasoned wood, fit it precisely to the spokes, and ensure everything was balanced and strong enough to withstand hard travel. "This is skilled work," Willa observed, watching as he selected a piece of oak and began measuring. "Where did you learn it?" "My father was a wheelwright back in Illinois before he got the itch to move west. I spent every summer from the time I was 8 working in his shop. Drove me crazy at the time, but I am grateful for it now." He showed her how to plane the wood smooth, how to measure twice and cut once, how to fit the pieces together with the kind of precision that separated adequate work from work that would last. Willa proved to be a quick study, her hands steady and her focus intense. They worked side by side, and Isaac found himself acutely aware of her presence, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the quiet satisfaction in her expression when a piece fit perfectly. Days began to blur together in a pleasant routine. Mornings were for ranch work, the necessary tasks that kept everything running. Afternoons were dedicated to the wagon, with both of them working on various aspects of the repair. Evenings were for good food and better conversation, for learning each other's stories and finding unexpected common ground. Isaac watched Willa come back to life by increments. The exhaustion faded from her face. She started to smile more easily, to laugh at his dry observations about ornery horses and stubborn fence posts. She filled the cabin with cooking smells and the sound of humming, unconscious melodies that spoke of contentment rather than grief. And somewhere in those days, something shifted between them. Hands brushed while passing tools and lingered just a moment too long. Eye contact held and deepened into something that made Isaac's heart beat faster. He caught himself looking for excuses to be near her, to hear her voice, to see that small smile that had started to appear more frequently. On the 5th day, While they were working on fitting the new hub to the spokes, Willa suddenly stopped and looked at him. "Isaac, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why has no woman snapped you up? You have got a good ranch, you are kind, you are not hard to look at. Seems like you would be quite the catch for the unmarried women around here." Isaac felt heat rise in his cheeks, a rare occurrence for a man who prided himself on staying level-headed. There are not that many unmarried women around here to begin with. Colorado City is not exactly overflowing with social opportunities. And besides, I have been focused on building the ranch. Did not seem fair to court anyone when all I had to offer was hard work and uncertain prospects. And now the ranch is established. Now I have something real to offer. He set down the spoke he was holding and met her eyes. Now I suppose I have just been waiting for the right person to come along. The air between them felt charged, heavy with things unsaid. Willa looked away first, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up another spoke. "The right person," she repeated softly. "That is a dangerous thing to wait for. Sometimes I think there is no such thing, just people who are willing to build something together." "Is that what you had with Thomas?" "No," she admitted. "What I had with Thomas was infatuation that faded into disappointment and obligation. I loved him, but I am not sure I was ever in love with him, not really. And I do not think he felt that way about me either. We were just two people who thought marriage was what we were supposed to do, so we did it." Isaac absorbed that, thinking about the implications. "Do you regret it?" "I regret a lot of things, but I cannot regret Emily, and I would not have had her without Thomas, so no, not the marriage itself, just the way it turned out." She paused in her work, staring at the wagon wheel as if it held answers. "I spent so long being what other people needed me to be. My parents' dutiful daughter, Thomas's practical wife, Emily's devoted mother, and now all those people are gone and I do not know who I am supposed to be anymore." "Maybe you are supposed to be whoever you want to be," Isaac suggested. "Maybe that is the gift, terrible as it is, of having all those obligations stripped away. You get to choose now. And what if I do not know how to choose? What if I am so used to being what others need that I have forgotten how to figure out what I need?" Isaac set down his tools and moved closer to her, close enough that he could see the flecks of green in her gray eyes. "Then maybe you start small. Stay another week. Let yourself rest properly. Let yourself feel something other than grief and exhaustion. See what happens when you are not running anymore. Isaac, the wagon is almost finished. My horses are nearly recovered. I should not take advantage of your hospitality any longer. What if I am asking you to stay not as hospitality but because I want you here?" The words came out before he could second-guess them, raw and honest. Willa's breath caught. "You barely know me. I know you have been through hell and came out the other side still able to be kind. I know you work hard and do not complain. I know you make the best apple pie I have ever tasted, and that you hum when you think no one is listening. I know that having you here has made this place feel like a home instead of just a house I sleep in." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "I know that when I think about you leaving, it makes something in my chest hurt." Tears welled up in Willa's eyes. "I am so broken, Isaac. I do not know if I have anything whole left to give anyone." "Then do not give me anything," he said gently. "Just stay. Let yourself be broken here where it is safe. Let yourself heal if healing is possible. No promises, no obligations. Just stay and see what happens." One tear spilled over and tracked down her cheek. "What if I stay and then leave anyway? What if I cannot be what you need?" "Then you leave and I will wish you well and be grateful for whatever time we had." "But Willa, what if you stay and something good comes of it? What if we could build something together, something that is ours?" She closed her eyes, and he could see the war playing out across her features. fear and hope, grief and the fragile possibility of something new. When she opened her eyes again, there was a determination in them that had not been there before. "One more week," she said. "But Isaac, you need to understand something. I am not who I was before Thomas and Emily died. That Willa is gone. I do not know who this new version is yet. Then we will figure it out together," he said, and squeezed her hand gently before letting go, knowing that pushing for more right now would be a mistake. They finished the wagon wheel that afternoon, fitting the last spoke and securing everything with careful precision. It was good work, solid and strong, work that would hold up to hard traveling. But when it was done and the wheel was back on the wagon, neither of them suggested testing it. Neither of them mentioned Willa leaving. That night after dinner, they sat on the porch together watching the stars come out. The September air was cool, promising the winter to come, and Isaac had brought out a blanket that they shared, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. "Tell me about your dreams," Willa said into the comfortable silence. "Not the ranch, I know about that, but what else do you want from life?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, gathering thoughts he had kept buried for years. "I want what I almost had with my sister before she died. Family. Not just blood family, but people who choose to be together, who build something meaningful. I want this cabin to be full of voices and laughter. I want to know that the work I am doing matters to someone besides just me. Children. Someday, if the right woman came along. I always thought I would be a good father, but it has to be with someone I love, someone who wants to build that life too." Willa pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I do not know if I can have more children. After Emily, there were complications. The doctor said it might not be possible. I am not asking you to have my children, Willa. I am just telling you my dreams because you asked. But if I stayed, if something developed between us, that would be something you would want, and I might not be able to give it to you." Isaac turned to look at her, seeing the vulnerability in her expression. "If something develops between us, it will be because of who you are, not what you can give me. There are many ways to build a family. Children are one way, but not the only way. You are too good," she whispered. "Too patient, too kind. You should be angry that I am making this so complicated. You are not making anything complicated. You are being honest about where you are, and I respect that." He reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, letting his hand linger against her cheek for just a moment. "I can wait, Willa. I have waited this long to find someone who makes me feel the way you do. A few more weeks or months to let you find your footing. That is nothing." She leaned into his touch, just slightly, and that small movement felt like more of a victory than all the ranch work he had ever completed. They sat together until the cold drove them inside, and when they said goodnight, Willa's hand squeezed his with a warmth that spoke of possibility. The second week passed differently than the first. The work was the same: ranch chores and maintenance, fence repairs and animal care. But the dynamic between them had shifted into something deeper, more intentional. Isaac found himself seeking out moments to make Willa smile, bringing her wildflowers he found on the range, saving her the choicest pieces of meat at dinner. Willa responded in kind, mending his clothes without being asked, leaving small surprises like fresh cookies or his favorite coffee prepared just the way he liked it. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him stories about Emily, about the joy and terror of being a mother, about the way her daughter had changed everything about how she saw the world. He shared memories of his parents, of his sister, of the dreams that had driven him to build this ranch in the middle of Colorado. One afternoon, while they were riding out to check on the cattle grazing in the far pasture, Willa suddenly reined in her horse and sat staring at the mountains. "What is it?" Isaac asked, pulling up beside her. I just realized that I have not thought about leaving in 3 days, she said, wonder in her voice. I have been thinking about planting a vegetable garden next spring, about where it would get the best sun, about how the cabin could use some curtains to keep the winter drafts out, about things that assume I will be here for those things. Isaac's heart kicked in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. And how does that make you feel? Terrified, she admitted. But also something else, something that might be happy if I let it be. He urged his horse closer until their legs were almost touching, the animals standing patiently while their riders worked through this moment. You do not have to decide everything today. You can just let yourself think about spring gardens and winter curtains without it meaning you have made some binding commitment. But it does mean something, Willa insisted. It means I am starting to put down roots, and that scares me because what if they get torn up again? What if I let myself care about this place, about you, and then everything falls apart? What if it does not? Isaac countered gently. What if you let yourself care and it turns into something good, something lasting? She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw the exact moment when her fear transformed into something else, something that looked like courage. Isaac Vance, are you falling in love with me? The question hung in the clear mountain air between them. Isaac could have deflected, could have made a joke or changed the subject, but Willa deserved better than that. She deserved honesty, even if it might scare her away. Yes, he said simply. I am. I have been falling in love with you since the moment you looked at me with those exhausted eyes and told me your wheel was broken. I am in love with your strength and your vulnerability. I am in love with the way you hum when you cook, and the way you are not afraid of hard work. I am in love with who you were and who you are becoming. And I know it is too soon, and I know you might not be ready to hear it, but you asked, and I will not lie to you. Tears spilled down Willa's cheeks, but she was smiling through them. You impossible man. You are supposed to be sensible and practical and give me time to sort my feelings out. I am giving you time. Loving you does not mean you have to love me back. It just means I am choosing to love you while you figure out what you need. And what if I already know? She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. What if I have been fighting what I feel because I am terrified of it, but I feel it anyway? Isaac's breath caught. Then tell me. Whatever it is, tell me true. Willa urged her horse closer until they were knee to knee, close enough that she could reach out and take his hand. I am falling in love with you too. With your kindness and your patience and the way you fixed my wagon and my spirit both without asking for anything in return. With the life you have built here and the way you have made space for me in it. With the future I can see when I look at you, a future I did not think I wanted until suddenly I did. Isaac felt like his heart might burst from his chest. He slid off his horse and reached up to help Willa down, and when her feet hit the ground he did not let go. Instead, he pulled her close, one hand cupping her face while the other wrapped around her waist. I am going to kiss you now, he said, giving her every chance to pull away. If that is not what you want, tell me. It is what I want, Willa whispered. It is exactly what I want. He kissed her there on the open range with the mountains watching and the horses standing patiently nearby. It was sweet and tender and full of promise, a first kiss that felt like coming home. Willa's arms came up around his neck, and she kissed him back with a fierce intensity that told him everything he needed to know about the depth of her feelings. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said. Not for another week, not temporarily. Stay and build a life with me. Marry me, Willa. She pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. Are you sure? It has only been 2 weeks. People will talk. They will say it is too fast, that I am a widow who should be in mourning longer. I do not care what people say. I have waited 31 years to find you. I am not going to waste time pretending I am not sure when I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I do not have anything to bring to a marriage, Willa said. The wagon, 2 horses, and the clothes on my back, that is all I own in the world. You have yourself, and that is everything I want. But Willa, I need to know you are choosing this because it is what you truly want, not because you do not know where else to go. I need to know you are choosing me, not just safety or security. She cupped his face in both her hands, her gray eyes fierce and clear. I am choosing you. I am choosing the life we could build together. I am choosing to believe that good things are still possible even after terrible loss. I am choosing love, Isaac, and I am choosing you. He kissed her again, sealing the promise between them. Then we will go into Colorado City tomorrow and find the preacher. We will do this properly. Tomorrow, Willa laughed, the sound bright and free. You really are not going to waste any time, are you? Not a single minute more than necessary. They rode back to the ranch in the golden light of late afternoon, and everything looked different to Isaac now, charged with new possibility. This was not just his ranch anymore. It was going to be their home, the foundation of the life they would build together. That night, they sat up late making plans, talking about practical things like how to expand the cabin to make it more suitable for a married couple, where to add the vegetable garden Willa wanted, what improvements the ranch needed before winter set in properly. But they also talked about dreams and hopes, about the kind of marriage they wanted to build, one based on partnership and honesty and choosing each other every day. I want to do this right, Willa said as the fire burned low in the stove. I want to be a good wife to you, not because I feel obligated, but because I genuinely want your happiness. And I want to be the kind of husband who deserves you, Isaac replied, who supports your dreams as much as you support mine, who makes you laugh and keeps you warm and never takes for granted what a gift it is to have you in my life. She moved from her chair to sit beside him, curling into his side with a contentment that felt as natural as breathing. We are going to be good together, are we not? We are going to be amazing together, Isaac corrected, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Now come on, we both need sleep if we are riding into town tomorrow. They said good night at the door to her room, but this time the goodbye was flavored with anticipation rather than uncertainty. Tomorrow would change everything, and they were both ready for it. The ride into Colorado City the next morning felt like it took both forever and no time at all. The town was small, barely more than a wide spot in the road with a general store, a saloon, a boarding house, and a church that doubled as a community meeting hall. Reverend Samuel Cotton was a weathered man in his 50s, who had been serving the scattered ranches and homesteads around Colorado City for the better part of a decade. He looked surprised when Isaac and Willa showed up on his doorstep asking to be married, but he did not ask inappropriate questions. He simply invited them inside and asked if they were both certain this was what they wanted. More certain than I have ever been about anything, Isaac said, taking Willa's hand. And you, Mrs. Vaughn, are you entering into this marriage of your own free will and with a clear understanding of what you are doing? I am, Willa said firmly. And it is Miss Vaughn now. I choose to leave my past behind and step into this new life as myself, not as someone's widow. The Reverend nodded his approval at that. Very well. I will need 2 witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house and her husband should serve well enough if they are available. The Pattersons were fetched, and within an hour, Isaac and Willa were standing before the Reverend in the simple church, speaking vows that would bind them together for the rest of their lives. Isaac had never been more aware of the weight and beauty of promises as he was in that moment, looking into Willa's eyes and pledging himself to her completely. I, Isaac Vance, take you, Willa Vaughn, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams and comfort your sorrows, to build a life with you that is founded on trust and genuine affection. Willa's voice was steady and clear as she made her own vows. I, Willa Vaughn, take you, Isaac Vance, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams and comfort your sorrows, to build a life with you that is founded on trust and genuine affection. They had no rings to exchange, but Isaac had brought a length of rawhide from which hung a small carved wooden heart he had made during the sleepless hours of the night before. He tied it around Willa's neck, and she touched it with trembling fingers, tears of joy streaming down her face. With this symbol I pledge myself to you, Isaac said softly. Everything I am, everything I have, it is yours. I accept your pledge, Willa whispered, and offer my own in return. Everything I am, everything I hope to become, it is yours. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Cotton declared. Isaac, you may kiss your bride. And Isaac did, thoroughly and tenderly, while the Pattersons clapped and the Reverend smiled his approval. When they finally broke apart, both grinning like fools, Isaac felt like the luckiest man alive. They spent a few hours in Colorado City after the wedding, buying supplies they would need for the winter ahead, and announcing their marriage to the few people they encountered. Most were surprised but warm in their congratulations, and Mrs. Patterson insisted on hosting a small celebratory meal at the boarding house. You take care of this one, she told Isaac, patting Willa's hand. She has got kind eyes but sad ones. You make sure those eyes get more smiles in them. That is my intention, madam, Isaac assured her. The ride back to the ranch, to their home, felt different than the ride in. They were husband and wife now, bound together not just by affection but by public vows and legal ties. The weight of it should have been frightening, but instead it felt right, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. As they rode, Willa told him more about her past, about the things she had not spoken of before. About the baby she had lost between her marriage and Emily's birth, about the fear that had lived in her heart through every moment of Emily's short life that she would lose her too. About the guilt she still carried for surviving when both Thomas and Emily had not. I know it is not rational, she said. I know the cholera was not something I could have prevented, but I still wake up some mornings feeling like I should have done more, tried harder, found a way to save them. Isaac reached across the space between their horses and took her hand. That guilt is a burden you do not deserve to carry, but I understand why you do. All I can promise is that I will be here to remind you every day that you did everything you could, that their deaths were not your fault, and that living and finding happiness again is not a betrayal of their memory. How did you get to be so wise? I am not wise. I just love you. And love means bearing witness to the hard truths as much as celebrating the good moments. They arrived home as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Isaac helped Willa down from her horse, and this time when his hands lingered on her waist, she did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. This is home now, she said, the words half question, half statement. This is home now, Isaac confirmed. Yours and mine together. He swept her up into his arms, making her laugh in surprise, and carried her across the threshold of their cabin. Inside, everything was familiar but transformed by the new reality of their marriage. This was their space now, their life to build however they wanted. Isaac set Willa down gently, but she did not step away. Instead, she reached up and pulled him down for a kiss that started sweet but quickly deepened into something more intense. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she responded by tangling her fingers in his hair. "Isaac," she murmured against his lips, "I am ready. I am ready to be your wife in every way." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, wanting to be sure. "There is no rush. We have all the time in the world. I know. But I do not want to wait. I want to start our life together now, tonight, completely." And so they did, coming together with a tenderness and passion that spoke of their deep connection. Isaac was gentle and patient, mindful that Willa had been through so much, and she responded with a fierce joy that told him she was choosing this, choosing him, choosing the intimacy they were creating together. Afterward, lying in bed with Willa's head on his chest and their legs tangled together, Isaac felt a peace he had not known was possible. This was what he had been building toward all these years without knowing it, not just a successful ranch but a partnership, a love that could weather any storm. "I love you," Willa whispered into the darkness. "I know I said it before, but I need you to know I mean it with everything in me. You saved my life, Isaac, not just my wagon, my actual life. I was so lost and you found me." "We found each other," he corrected, tightening his arms around her. "And we are going to build something beautiful together. I promise you that. I know we will. I believe in us." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and when morning came they woke to their first full day as husband and wife. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Isaac's life. He and Willa fell into an easy partnership, working together to prepare the ranch for winter. They expanded the cabin, adding another room that would serve as a proper bedroom, giving them more space and privacy. Willa threw herself into making the place a true home, sewing curtains for the windows, braiding rugs for the floors, organizing everything with an efficiency that spoke of her joy in finally having a place that was truly hers. They also worked on building their relationship, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. Isaac discovered that Willa sang while she worked when she was truly happy, that she had a wicked sense of humor that caught him off guard, that she was stronger than she looked and not afraid to challenge him when she thought he was wrong. Willa learned that Isaac was a morning person who liked his coffee strong and his eggs over easy, that he had a tendency to take on too much because he was not used to having help, that he showed love through actions more than words but was learning to use both. They talked about the future, making plans that stretched years ahead. Isaac wanted to expand the ranch, add more cattle and maybe some sheep. Willa wanted to start that vegetable garden and maybe keep chickens, to have fresh eggs and meat without having to rely entirely on hunting and the occasional trip to town. They both wanted to make the place more comfortable before the deep cold of winter set in. One evening in late October, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Willa brought up the subject that had been hovering unspoken between them. "I think we should sell my wagon and horses." Isaac looked up from the harness he was mending. "Are you sure? That is the last of what you brought with you." "Exactly. It is a reminder of who I was before, and I do not need those reminders anymore. We could use the money to buy supplies for the winter, maybe get some chickens like I wanted, and keeping extra horses we do not really need is just more work. If that is what you want, I will take them into Colorado City next week and find buyers. But Willa, I want you to be certain, once they are gone, they are gone." She set down her knitting and moved to sit beside him on the floor in front of the fire. "I am certain. That wagon carried me here, and I am grateful for that, but this is my home now. I do not need escape routes or backup plans. I need to commit fully to this life to us." Isaac set aside his work and pulled her into his arms. You have no idea how happy it makes me to hear you say that. I think I do, she said, smiling up at him. You get this look on your face like you cannot quite believe I am real. You had that same look on our wedding day. That is because I still sometimes cannot believe you chose this. Every day, Willa said firmly. I choose you every single day. Winter came to the Colorado mountains with a vengeance that year. Snow began falling in early November and did not let up for weeks. Isaac had prepared well, with stores of food and firewood that would see them through even the harshest season. But being essentially snowed in for days at a time could drive people apart if they were not well suited to each other. He and Willa thrived in it. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other from the few books Isaac owned, and the ones Willa had bought with the money from selling her wagon. They played cards and checkers, told stories of their childhoods, and made love with a passion that only seemed to grow deeper with time. Isaac taught Willa to play the harmonica, an instrument he had picked up years ago but rarely had reason to use. She was terrible at it, producing more squeaks than actual music, but she laughed so hard at her own attempts that he did not care. She taught him to knit, claiming he needed a hobby for the long winter nights, and he actually became decent at it, producing a serviceable scarf that Willa wore with pride. They also talked about the harder things. About Thomas and Emily, keeping their memories alive without letting grief poison the present. About Isaac's parents and sister, the family he had lost too young. About the children they might or might not have, and how they would build a family regardless. I have been thinking, Willa said one night as they lay in bed listening to the wind howl outside. Even if I can have more children, I am not sure I want to. The fear of losing another one, I do not know if I could survive that. Isaac stroked her hair, thinking about his response. Then we will not have children, or we will adopt if you ever feel differently. The point of this marriage is not to produce heirs, it is to build a life together that makes us both happy. But you said you wanted children. I do not want to deprive you of that. You are not depriving me of anything. I want you, Willa. Everything else is negotiable. She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. I married Thomas because it seemed like the thing to do. I married you because I could not imagine my life without you in it. Do you understand the difference? I do. And I married you for the same reason. As winter deepened, and the new year of 1879 arrived, Isaac and Willa celebrated quietly in their cabin. They had cider that Willa had made from apples bought in town, and they toasted to the future. To new beginnings, Isaac said, raising his glass. To choosing love, Willa added, clinking her glass against his. To us. To us. February brought a break in the weather, a string of relatively mild days that allowed Isaac to check on the cattle and make sure the fences had held up under the heavy snow. Willa insisted on coming with him, bundled in layers of wool and leather, her cheeks pink with cold and exertion. They found the herd mostly intact, huddled together in the sheltered areas Isaac had designated for them. A few had not made it through the harsh weather, but the losses were acceptable, expected even. As they rode back toward the cabin, Willa was quieter than usual. What is on your mind? Isaac asked. She pulled her horse to a stop and turned to look back at the mountains. I was just thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago. Last February I was in Kansas, trapped in a marriage that made me lonely, caring for a child I loved but terrified of losing. I could not have imagined any of this. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good, she said immediately. So very good. I just wish I could tell my past self that everything was going to be okay, that the worst would happen but I would survive it and find something beautiful on the other side. Isaac rode up beside her and took her hand. Your past self got you here. She survived the unsurvivable and kept going even when every part of her wanted to quit. You should be proud of her." "I am," Willa said, squeezing his hand. "And I am grateful to you for seeing the person I could become when I could not see it myself." As winter finally began to release its grip and spring approached, they began preparing for the busy season ahead. Isaac had plans to expand the herd, to build a new barn, to make improvements that would increase the ranch's productivity. Willa had her garden to plant and chickens to raise, having bought a dozen hens and a rooster from a neighboring ranch. They worked side by side as the snow melted and the first green shoots appeared in the mountain valleys. It was hard work, exhausting work, but there was joy in it because they were building something together. Every fence post Isaac set, every row Willa planted was an investment in their shared future. One morning in early April, Willa woke feeling ill. She tried to hide it from Isaac, but he knew her too well by now to be fooled. "You are pale as milk," he said, feeling her forehead for fever. "What is wrong?" "Just my stomach being disagreeable. It will pass." But it did not pass. For 3 mornings in a row, Willa was sick, and on the 4th morning, Isaac put his foot down. "We are riding into Colorado City to see the doctor." "Isaac, it is nothing, probably just something I ate." "Then the doctor will tell us that and we will come home." "But we are going." The doctor in Colorado City was a competent man named Dr. Harrison who had seen everything the frontier could throw at him. He examined Willa thoroughly while Isaac paced in the waiting room, worry eating at him. When they finally emerged, Willa's face was unreadable. "Well," Isaac demanded. "What is wrong?" Dr. Harrison smiled. "Nothing is wrong, Mr. Vance. Your wife is pregnant, about 2 months along if I had to guess." The world seemed to stop. Isaac stared at Willa, then at the doctor, then back at Willa. But she was told she might not be able to have more children. "Medicine is not an exact science," Dr. Harrison said. "Sometimes what we think is impossible turns out to be merely improbable. Congratulations to you both." Outside the doctor's office, Isaac and Willa stood in the spring sunshine, both trying to process this information. "How do you feel about this?" Isaac asked carefully. "I know you said you were not sure you wanted children." Willa's hand went to her still flat stomach, and her expression was complicated, fear and wonder and something that might have been joy all mixed together. "I am terrified," she admitted. "But I am also happy, I think." "Is that allowed, to be both?" "Of course it is allowed." "This is wonderful news and also scary news. Both things can be true." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "We will get through this together, whatever happens. You are not alone in this." "Promise me something," Willa said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Promise me that if something goes wrong, if I lose this baby or if something happens to me, promise me you will remember that we had this time, that we were happy." "Nothing is going to happen to you or the baby," Isaac said fiercely. "I will not allow it. You cannot control everything, Isaac." "Maybe not, but I can promise to do everything in my power to keep you both safe. And I can promise that, yes, I will remember our happiness no matter what comes. But Willa, I need you to make me a promise too." "What?" "Promise me you will let yourself hope. Let yourself believe that this could turn out well. Do not protect yourself from potential pain by refusing to feel the joy." She pulled back to look up at him, and he saw the moment when she made the decision, when she chose hope over fear. "All right, I promise." The months that followed were a study in contrasts. Willa's pregnancy was not easy. She was sick often, tired even more often, and struggled with fears that she could not always articulate. But there were also moments of pure joy, like the first time she felt the baby move and grabbed Isaac's hand to place it on her growing belly so he could feel it too. Isaac threw himself into making sure everything was perfect for the baby's arrival. He built a cradle from the finest wood he could find, sanding it until it was smooth as glass so no splinter could possibly harm tender skin. He added another room to the cabin, a nursery with a window that looked out toward the mountains. He rode into town more frequently to check with Dr. Harrison to make sure Willa and the baby were progressing well. "You are going to worry yourself into an early grave," Willa told him one evening, watching him pace the cabin for the third time in an hour. "I just want everything to be perfect. It already is perfect. We have a home, we have each other, and we have a baby coming who will be loved beyond measure. What more could we possibly need?" He stopped pacing and came to sit beside her on the bed, taking her swollen hands in his. "I need you to be safe. I need this baby to be healthy. I need to not lose you the way I have lost everyone else I have ever loved." "Oh, Isaac," Willa's eyes filled with tears. "You cannot live your life in fear of loss. I know that better than anyone. Yes, terrible things can happen. But good things can happen too, and we have to believe in the good, or what is the point? When did you become the wise one?" "When I married a man who taught me that hope is not weakness." She kissed him softly. "We are going to be fine. I feel it in my bones. This baby is going to be healthy and loud and completely disruptive to our peaceful life, and we are going to love every minute of it." Isaac wanted to believe her, and as the summer progressed and Willa grew rounder and the baby's movements became stronger, he found that he did believe. They were going to be a family. The baby arrived on a hot August night, 3 weeks earlier than Dr. Harrison had predicted. Isaac had ridden to fetch the doctor at the first sign of labor, and then spent the longest hours of his life pacing outside the bedroom while Willa labored and the doctor attended her. When he finally heard the sharp cry of a newborn, his knees nearly gave out with relief. Dr. Harrison emerged a few minutes later, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Mr. Vance. A healthy, angry son with an excellent set of lungs on him." Isaac rushed past him into the bedroom, where Willa lay pale and exhausted in the bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was radiant. "Isaac, meet our son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny red face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was indeed crying lustily, his face scrunched up in indignation at being thrust into the world. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny hand. The baby's fingers immediately wrapped around his thumb, and Isaac felt his heart expand in his chest until he thought it might burst. "Absolutely perfect. I was thinking we could name him Samuel, after the reverend who married us," Willa said. "Samuel Isaac Vance, if you approve." "I more than approve. It is a perfect name." Isaac carefully sat on the edge of the bed, unable to take his eyes off his son. "You did it. You brought him safely into the world. We did it," Willa corrected. "I could not have gotten through this without knowing you were here, that we were in this together." Dr. Harrison cleared his throat from the doorway. "Everything looks good. Both mother and baby are healthy. Willa will need rest and good food, but I expect a full recovery. I will check in tomorrow, but for now, I think I will leave you to get acquainted with your son." After the doctor left, Isaac and Willa spent hours just looking at Samuel, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, his perfect little ears, the way he would root around looking for food when Willa held him. It was surreal and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "I keep thinking he is going to disappear," Willa confessed as she nursed the baby. "That this is all a dream and I am going to wake up back in that broken wagon, alone and lost." "This is real," Isaac assured her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We are real, and Samuel is real, and we are a family now." "A family," Willa repeated, testing the words. I like the sound of that. The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and steep learning curves as they adjusted to life with an infant. Samuel was indeed loud, as Willa had predicted, with powerful lungs and opinions about everything. But he was also sweet and curious, his dark eyes tracking movement, his little hands reaching for everything in range. Isaac discovered he loved being a father. He loved the weight of Samuel in his arms, the trust implicit in the way the baby would settle against his chest and fall asleep. He loved watching Willa with their son, seeing her bloom into motherhood with a confidence she had not had before. I think it is different this time because I am different, she told him one night as they both sat up with Samuel, who was fussing through another bout of colic. With Emily, I was so young and so scared of doing everything wrong. And Thomas was not really involved, thought babies were women's work. But you are here, really here, and it makes all the difference. I would not want to be anywhere else, Isaac said, bouncing Samuel gently and making nonsense sounds that seemed to soothe him. This is exactly where I am supposed to be. As winter approached again, they settled into new routines built around their growing family. The ranch work continued, but Isaac made sure never to be gone from the cabin for too long, wanting to be present for every moment of Samuel's development. He saw his son's first smile, heard his first laugh, was there when Samuel started to roll over and then to sit up. Willa thrived in ways Isaac had not anticipated. She had been so afraid during the pregnancy, so certain something would go wrong. But once Samuel was safely in her arms, that fear transformed into fierce protectiveness and deep joy. She sang to him constantly, made up games that made him giggle, filled the cabin with love and laughter. On their first wedding anniversary, after Samuel had finally fallen asleep after a long day of being entertained, Isaac and Willa sat together on the porch despite the November cold, wrapped in blankets and each other. A year ago we were promising to build a life together, Isaac said. I do not think either of us quite imagined this. No, Willa agreed. I thought maybe we would be happy. I hoped we would be, but I did not dare dream we would be this happy, that I could love you this much and be loved this completely in return. You fix me too, you know, Isaac said. I did not even realize how broken I was until you showed up and made me whole again. Willa turned to kiss him, slow and sweet. We fixed each other, and now we are building something neither of us could have built alone. I love you, Willa Vance. I love you too, Isaac Vance. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. The years passed in the way that years do when life is full and good. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere and loved nothing more than helping with ranch chores, even when his help was more hindrance. Willa did eventually get her vegetable garden, which flourished under her care and provided fresh produce through the growing seasons. Isaac expanded the ranch bit by bit, adding to the herd, improving the buildings, making their home more comfortable and prosperous. Against all expectations and the doctor's original predictions, Willa became pregnant again when Samuel was 2. This time the pregnancy was easier, her fears less paralyzing because she had evidence now that good outcomes were possible. Their daughter, Martha Emily, was born on a spring morning in 1881, and she was as calm and content as her brother had been fussy and demanding. We make beautiful children, Willa said, cradling Martha while Samuel tried to climb onto the bed to see his new sister. We make beautiful everything, Isaac corrected, helping Samuel up so he could gently touch Martha's tiny hand. Look what we have built, Willa. Look at this family, this home, this life. She looked around at the cabin they had expanded multiple times, at the son who was already chattering excitedly about being a big brother, at the husband who had saved her in every way a person could be saved, and felt a contentment so deep, it was almost overwhelming. "I know you meant it when you said I could leave whenever I wanted all those years ago," she said. "But I need you to know that I am never leaving. This is home. You are home. Forever." "Forever," Isaac agreed, leaning down to kiss her. "That is exactly what I was hoping you would say." More years passed, bringing both challenges and joys. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to predators and fences that needed constant mending. There were childhood illnesses that scared them both and accidents that reminded them how fragile life could be. But there were also birthdays and holidays, first words and first steps, the daily miracles of watching their children grow. When Samuel was 7 and Martha was 5, Willa found herself pregnant again, surprising them both. Their third child, a son they named David, arrived late in 1886 and completed their family in a way none of them had anticipated. 3 children, Isaac marveled, holding David while Samuel and Martha took turns making faces to try to get their baby brother to smile. "Our cabin is not going to know what to do with all this life in it." "Then we will build it bigger," Willa said. "We will make room. That is what we do." And they did. Over the years, the original 2-room cabin grew into a proper house, with bedrooms for each child and a spacious kitchen where Willa could cook the large meals their growing family required. The ranch prospered, became known throughout the territory for the quality of Isaac's horses and cattle. They became pillars of the small community around Colorado City, hosting gatherings and helping neighbors through hard times. But more than any external success, what they built was a marriage of genuine partnership and deep love. They never stopped choosing each other, never took for granted the miracle of having found one another when both were at their lowest points. They talked through problems, supported each other's dreams, and created a home where their children grew up secure in the knowledge that they were loved unconditionally. Samuel grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch and intended to take it over someday. Martha was bright and curious, always reading, always asking questions, determined to become a teacher. David was still young, full of mischief and joy, keeping everyone on their toes. One evening, when Samuel was 18 and preparing to take on more responsibility for the ranch, Isaac and Willa sat on the porch as they had so many times before, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "You ever think about that broken wagon?" Isaac asked. Willa smiled, her hand finding his automatically. "Sometimes. I think about the woman I was then, so lost and hopeless, and I am grateful to her for keeping going, for making it to your ranch instead of giving up somewhere along the way. I am grateful to her too. And to whatever force in the universe decided to break that wheel right at the edge of my property." "Fate," Willa said. "I think it was fate. We were meant to find each other." "You really believe that?" "I do. I believe some people are meant to fix each other's broken pieces and build something beautiful together. I believe we are those people." Isaac pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. 20 years. Can you believe it has been 20 years since you showed up with that broken wagon? 20 years of being loved the way I never thought possible. 20 years of building this incredible life. 20 years of being exactly where I am supposed to be. And what about the next 20 years? Willa turned to look at him, her gray eyes still as beautiful as they had been the day they met. "The next 20 years will be even better. We will watch our children build their own lives. We will grow old together. We will keep choosing each other every single day." I like the sound of that. So do I. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the Colorado sky, they sat together in comfortable silence. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that had withstood every test. The broken wagon was long gone, sold for scrap years ago. But what it had brought to Isaac's ranch remained, stronger and more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. Willa had arrived with a broken wagon and a broken spirit. Isaac had fixed both, but more than that, he had loved her back to wholeness. And in return, she had given him the family and purpose he had been searching for all his life. Together, they had built something lasting, something real, something that would endure long after they were gone. Their story was not about dramatic rescues or grand gestures. It was about two wounded people choosing to heal together, to build together, to love together. It was about the quiet courage of starting over and the profound gift of being truly seen and accepted by another person. As they finally rose to go inside, checking on their sleeping children one last time before bed as they did every night, Isaac thought about how different his life might have been if that wagon wheel had not broken, if Willa had made it past his ranch to whatever destination she had been fleeing toward. But it had broken and she had stayed, and everything that mattered to him now flowed from that moment. His wife, his children, the home they had built, the love that filled every corner of their lives. All of it traced back to a broken wagon and a woman who had needed help at exactly the moment when Isaac needed someone to help. "Thank you," he whispered to Willa as they settled into bed that night. "For what? For staying, for choosing me, for building this life with me." She curled into his side, her head on his chest in the position that had become as natural as breathing over the years. "Thank you for fixing my wagon and my spirit both. Thank you for loving me when I did not think I could be loved again. Thank you for this beautiful, perfect life." "I love you, Willa. I love you too, Isaac, always and forever." And as they drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the life they had built together, both of them knew with absolute certainty that they had found what most people spent their whole lives searching for. They had found home in each other, and that was the greatest gift of all. The ranch continued to thrive under their joint stewardship, and as the years rolled on into the 1890s, they watched with pride as their children became adults. Samuel married a kind woman named Grace, and took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, building his own house on the property so he and his wife could start their own family. Martha became a teacher as she had dreamed, opening a small school in Colorado City and filling young minds with knowledge and curiosity. David was still finding his path, but he had time, and he had the security of knowing his family would support whatever choices he made. Isaac and Willa settled into the role of elder statesmen of their family and community, respected for their wisdom and the example of their marriage. They were the couple people pointed to when they wanted proof that true love existed, that two people could build something that lasted. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a celebration at the ranch, inviting everyone from miles around. There were speeches and toasts, food and music, laughter and joy. But the moment Isaac treasured most was late in the evening, when he and Willa slipped away from the party to walk down to the spot where her wagon had broken all those years ago. "Can you believe all this came from that moment?" Willa asked, looking back at their house all lit up with lanterns, full of people celebrating their love. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream," Isaac admitted. "Like I am going to wake up and find myself alone in that cabin again, building a ranch with no one to share it with." "Not a dream," Willa said, taking his hand. "Very much real, and I plan to keep it real for many more years to come." "Is that a promise?" "It is absolutely a promise." They stood there together as they had so many times before, watching the mountains fade into darkness and the stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. And Isaac knew, with the certainty that came from 25 years of shared experience, that he was the luckiest man alive. He had fixed a broken wagon and helped heal a broken spirit. But more than that, He had found his partner, his love, his home. And in the end, that was the only thing that truly mattered. Willa had arrived with nothing but heartbreak and a desperate need for somewhere to belong. Isaac had given her that, and so much more. And together, they had built a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone, living on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch they had built together, in the example they had set of what marriage could be when two people truly chose each other. As they walked back to the celebration hand in hand, both of them smiled, knowing that whatever years remained to them would be spent exactly as they wanted, together, still choosing each other, still building their beautiful life one day at a time. The broken wagon was long forgotten, but what it had brought to Isaac's ranch would endure forever. And that was exactly as it should be.